Hello everyone, Zeldarinth here, and for today's video on Umamusume, as we approach getting the free selector for the 1.5 anniversary, I thought we'd kind of talk a little bit about a lot of the support cards that you may be looking at potentially utilizing it on, and my thoughts on whether or not it's going to be worth it for you to use this selector on them, and kind of how you might want to prioritize its usage, as there are a ton of options, and this is going to become harder and harder as we get more of these selectors, and the wide range of cards becomes more and more niche. And so with that, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. And we'll start right off the bat with the big three cards that you probably hear or have heard from a lot of people on being top tier priorities. With the first one being Kitasan Black. Now, Kitasan Black has actually, in my opinion, lost a little bit of value, especially for veteran players that have been very strategic with their pulls, as well as being decently lucky in that potentially you may not be using her in every single one of your ace runs up, but that's going to be coming with the flexibility of being able to borrow because you have every other slot covered. And that is because one of her main draws currently as a good generic speed card is that not only she have a very solid stat stick and high special priority, she does have Professor of Curvature, a generically good gold skill that you can pretty much use anywhere for helping push your Uma forward. And still a very solid pickup here. Now, the big thing on her is she is very backloaded in a lot of her value in terms of being a strong speed card that can land on speed, as Limit Break 3 and Limit Break 4 are what add to the special priority, with Limit Break 3 bringing her up to 40, Limit Break and MLB bringing her up to 80. Doesn't really change too much else within her, but we do have the initial friendship gauge also moving up from 30 to 35, from Limit Break 2 to Limit Break 4. And to me, that's really the main breakpoints of if you have Kitasan Black at Limit Break 2, I feel like the selector can really elevate her to having a lot more value to you. Not only with that, but making her land on speed more often with that special priority. It's very, very important to get rainbows consistently in Grand Live, and the only way to really do that is having your speed cards land on speed, which is what I'm going to say her main value is going into it. Now, like I already mentioned, kind of her downside is if you've been playing this game a while and you have a very solid deck at this point where you're very flexible on what your borrow can be. So maybe you have your Light Hello, you have your Agnes Tachyon, you have your Summer Maruzensky, you have Fine Motion, and you're really getting to that point where it's like, well, I can pretty much use anything I want in my selector. A little bit of value of her falls off because of Tokai Teo Wit, which will be dropping here very soon. She'll be the one that drops with the other free pulls, and she has one of the main draws of Kitasan Black of Professor of Curvature built into her, which then allows you to replace Kitasan with maybe another card that can really help you out. And maybe, or if you're needing to bring like a stamina card like Super Creek, it allows you to then utilize like Agnes Tachyon alongside Summer Maruzensky and drop Kitasan Black. Still, even with that, she is still a very strong speed card, and most people, especially free to play, are not completely in that spot to have the ultimate flexibility to do something like that. And if you're in a point where you can top her up to Limit Break 3 or Limit Break 4, maybe even you have a crystal or two that saved up to bring her up, that makes her a very good, strong option. Continues to be very strong and will not be completely replaced until El Condor Pasa speed drops with Lark, which is 2 scenarios away. So that's kind of my benefits there. We still have basically 8 months of value coming out of Kitasan Black. And another good speed card along similar veins to Kitasan Black that I kind of forgot to mention, so I'm kind of just throwing in here, will be Mayano Top Gun Speed. She's similar to Kitasan in that she's backloaded with her special priority. So if you ever hire dupes, you can use your dupes to get her special priority 40 with the first one at Limit Break 3, and Limit Break 4 brings you up the special priority 80. Big drawback to her, kind of comparing her to Kitasan Black, is her initial friendship is baked into her unique effect, and it only gives her 15 versus Kitasan's being much higher, as well as a lot of the other speed cards being higher than this. But she does have the power bonus. She does have a good special priority high speed bonus. She has training effectiveness. She has okay hints in here, one of them being Nimble Nav. And then for Pace Chasers, which really nice, is Head On in her first chain. But it is a gamble to try and get it off of her. But it is a nice one to pick up there. But with Grand Live and scenarios just in general wanting you to get rainbows as quickly as possible, it's one of her big drawbacks is you're going to need to get that friendship up very quickly. just to utilize the full value of the card. But outside of that, she's another potential option for your selector here when it comes to speed cards. Another one that'll be coming, and this one to me, I could probably say may be more important for a lot of people over Kitasan, which is the other big one, which is Super Creek. Now, Super Creek has one big negative, especially in Grand Live when you bring her if you're needing to get that stamina up because of how important it is and how hard it is to get, is that she is very backloaded in terms of her initial friendship. She starts with, if you get her to Limit Break 2, you have 0 initial friendship. That's just not going to cut it in Grand Live because you need to get rainbows ASAP. And Limit Break 3 opens it up at 15, and then Limit Break 4 brings it all the way to 30. Now, one of the things is we do have Super Creek coming in a rerun in, I believe, a couple months here, which means you could hold on to this selector. I mean, that's always going to be an option, is just hold on to the selector and make the decision a little bit later. But it does lose its value rapidly as we continue to move through scenarios. But she is a very solid pick. If you have her at Limit Break 3, I feel like it's really good to just top her up to Limit Break 4 with the selector. Or maybe you have Limit Break 2 and a crystal, and then you can just top her up with the selector and the crystal. Get her all the way to that initial friendship 30. She's going to be working very well at that point. And pretty much the best stamina card if you bring one in Grand Live to utilize. And she actually continues to hold her value a lot longer, even more so than Kitasan Black, as her true real replacement comes with Sounds of Earth. And for free-to-play, potentially a lot of them may be willing to just cope with continuing to utilize Super Creek and then skipping Sounds of Earth and waiting to air Shakir dropping, which is the really strong stamina card. Now, that'll come when we get to that point. That's still quite a ways away. Now, the big downside to Super Creek being that you're not always going to be bringing a stamina card to your ace runs, and even as well as your parent runs, which kind of gives her a diminished value in that respect, in that she's not always going to be used, but when you're wanting a stamina card, she's going to be the best one to kind of utilize in that, and she actually still has a lot of long-term value. And so I would put her actually above Kitasan in terms of my priority, especially if you're already good with like Agnes Tachyon speed, you have Summer Maruzensky, and maybe you were a newer player and you just don't have Kitasan, but you have those two. You have your solid stat sticks, and then you can always get Super Creek up for when you need stamina, and then you can either borrow Tokai Teo Wit if you need to borrow a Wit card, or you can borrow Kitasan Black if you want a third speed card, as long as you have that flexibility. And that brings her really high up there. The other one, and this is of the 3 main that have always been talked about, would be the weaker one of the group, but still probably one of the best of the Wit cards utilized, and that's going to be Fine Motion. And it's really going to depend on where you're kind of at with her dupes. She's not as backloaded as Super Creek in terms of you can live with lower dupes of her. Now, she does have her rerun coming up alongside with Summer Maruzensky, so you may want to pull in that banner first before thinking about using your selector here. But right now, she is still going to be one of the best of the Wit cards to utilize through Grand Live. And your dupes do improve her overall with like training effectiveness. You do get the mood effect, which isn't a giant difference, but can help here, as well as one of her main negatives here being her low initial friendship gauge. And in Grand Live, there are some alternatives to her that, especially if you don't want to, if you have other cards that may be options for you when it comes to the selector, you may want to use it on while using your selector, or while using another Wit card that can work out a little bit better than her for you. Now, I will say, when it comes to her skills, she's very good on the skill side of things too, and that's, to me, what makes her still a very good Wit card to continue using through Grand Live. Biggest thing being, like, you have right-handed, easy access to that, and Nimble Nav. And unlike Track Blazer, it's going to be much, much easier to get hints off your support cards, in the sense that you're not doing nonstop racing. You're going to be constantly hitting training, and we're going to start getting a lot more through our support cards again. And Nimble Nav being very solid just about for anybody except front runners. Right-handed for a good chunk of tracks. Of course, you got right-handed and Fall Runner for the upcoming dirt. That makes her really good. You have Speed Star. It sucks, though, that it is a gamble, but you do have Speed Star, that you can utilize on some of these tracks where it's very, very strong for your pace chasers, and thus still a solid wit card in that regard. Now, when it comes to thinking about fine motion versus other wit cards, it really kind of depends on your account. I know there's some of them that can be really good stat sticks if you're just needing a stat stick and you've lucked into multiple copies of them. The biggest thing you're going to want to worry about in some of them, I'm going to use the Kuren-chan wit card as an example, but the one I would prioritize maybe if it's after fine motion, maybe you have fine motion, you're looking at another wit card that you potentially might want to invest into. This is going to come down to how many copies you have of them. And just, I'm using one example. I don't want to go through every single one of them, but we'll look at a couple here. You have Kuren-chan wit is another option if you've lucked into her into high dupes. And that's the key thing. She's in a similar situation to Super Creek in that she's backloaded on her initial friendship gauge. But if you have her, say, Limit Break 3, and you're like, man, she's a solid card, but I don't like this initial friendship of 15, which is what Fine Motion herself has, just by herself. If you want to, you can top her up and then get it all the way up to a 30% initial friendship, which is really massive when it comes to Grand Live, because you want to get rainbows ASAP. I mean, Kuren-chan herself, her biggest negative being she has really no value on the skill side of things outside of sprints, and that even includes now play times over. That was one of her biggest values before Grand Live, but now we have easy access to that from Light Hello. So she's just a solid stat stick. But getting that, I mean, she just can be a stat stick if you're needing one and you've just lucked into Limit Break 3. Outside of that, very not useful there. Another one that we'll see some use but is more niche, if we want to go back here, would be the Nishino Flower wit card. And so this one has a very high initial starting friendship. And okay on the stat stick. If you have a copy or so of her, you could always top this one up and the Limit Break 1 giving you the speed bonus. Now you have the back-ended initial wit, which is not as important. And she starts right off the bat with actually a decent amount of friendship. Now, she's a niche one in that she has determined decent, but there are going to be some tracks where this is a very good gamble or useful skill for them, but very niche. But just one of those potential options there. Now, that's kind of the wit cards. I don't want to really look at all the rest of them. There's tons of options there depending on what you have. The biggest thing you're looking for is if it's giving you some more initial friendship, like 15, like we see with some of them. That is a massive upgrade to the overall card value. But another one that it's been talked about quite a bit. Oh, well, it's going to be the Maruzensky speed card here. And that is because a lot of people, the advice that I gave and that a lot of people gave was pulling for Summer Maruzensky. Worst case, you only get one copy of her, or you get 0 copies of her and have to pity her at 200 pulls. She is one of the top values in terms of using this selector to bring her up to Limit Break 1, which is where you unlock the power bonus, and now you have the bulk of her value at this point. Now, and the next threshold being Limit Break 3, of course. If you're like me and you have her at Limit Break 2, you can top her up with the selector to bring her up one more to get the next level of value. But even at Limit Break 0, if you did 200, that's all you got. Top her up, get that power bonus. Very, very good generic speed card for everybody. Yes, she is primarily for your front runners because that's what the gold's for. But everybody else can take some value out of her just because she has such high training effectiveness. And she gets it, like, especially with us no longer doing Track Blazer and us leveling up. Like in Grand Live, you're going to be getting level 5 speed and wit very quickly. She can be very strong when she lands on that wit side of things. Plus, having a lot of good skills built in that you can utilize for parent making, especially front runners. And she's one of the ways to get Slipstream now. But overall, just a good generic speed card in general that will still last you a while, especially if you're utilize front runners quite a bit. And so with that, the next one I want to take a look at is going to be another speed card. And this one's, of course, another niche one because that's a lot of what, after you get out of the core generic ones, there's a lot of niche ones that give you a lot of options if you have copies of them that you've gotten off banner. And Taiki Shuttle Speed is one of those niche cards that will have a lot of value in so your mile races, in that she is basically your only access to Mile Maven outside of specifically the Umas that have it built in. And if you've gotten copies of her, especially like if you got one copy, you can bring her up to power bonus 1. Or if you're anywhere in the dupe range, most dupes bring some value. For example, getting her up to limit break 3 will top her out at her initial friendship of 20, because she starts all the way down at 15, which at limit break 0, and you only add them up at 1, 2, and then 2 again. And then if you have it to limit break 3, you start adding on the training effectiveness all the way up to 10. So pretty much most of the dupe copies here, depending on where you're at, have a lot of value. Now, she's very niche. She's for miles, of course. But she is a very solid stat stick. And she does have skill point bonus built in. One of the things that I haven't really talked about in these support cards yet, which we'll be kind of getting into here after we go over them, is their value in the independent training. And those that have skill point bonus, or bonuses in general, seem to be working out very, very well. And she is one that can do that, get you your mile skills. This is thinking long term. Right now, I think a lot of us are just getting our new dirt rotation established with our generic white sparks. And then when we start specializing, cards like Taiki Shuttle for when you're building your miler parents and grandparents can be very good, as well as being very good ace for the miles if you have high dupes there. Now, talking about independent training, there's another card I want to look at. A card that I have hated and never liked using in Track Blazer, but was strong and utilized by a lot of people. That'd be the Fuku Speed card. Now, this is a card that is dead on arrival, in my opinion, dead on arrival for ace runs, but has been brought back from the grave, for the simple fact that she is working out very, very well in independent training. The two things that are working very good in independent training: PAL cards, and then cards that give initial stats. So we're even seeing value out of like Marvelous Sunday power being very good, and she only gives power and stamina. Fuku gives it to every single one of the stats. And so this is one of those situations, if you're at decent amount of dupes of her, especially if you're at like limit break 3, you can top her up and get a lot of value in trying to get SS in your independent trainings. She is a very good card for that. Now, to me, she's like a last option for this. Like all those other ones are way better than this. But topping her up a little bit can make your independent trainings and getting SS a lot more consistent, which we've seen. It's kind of the same thing with the other ones that have initial stats. And if you want to top into her for that, I really don't like her still, even though she can do that, for the simple fact she brings only that value. That's the only value she brings. And her skills are pretty much all useless in that respect, other than maybe late surgical corners. And I really wouldn't see myself using her in ace runs anymore without her having that special priority. But she is an option to kind of help you with your independent training if you don't really have anything else to pick up. But bringing up independent training, the other thing what I could say is very solid will be just PAL cards in general. Now, you can't get Light Hello with it, but you have other ones like Rico, even Tazuna, and Throne that are really showing that they give a ton. And I would say actually Throne is probably the best of the PAL cards within this. Now, low limit breaks, I haven't seen testing on it, but one thing you could do is just hold on to this for now and kind of see what support cards are working well, especially even at low limit breaks within building parents and grandparents with independent training, because I've already seen with myself having low limit break, Light Hello, having her do very well. I've tested even Rico at low limit break because I have her, I think, limit break 1, and she's still giving a crap ton of skill points and stats. Not as much as I've seen the data show for, which I have right here, for MLB, but as data does come in from people on these that are testing out the cards at different limit breaks, you can see what their impacts are. And you can see with Light Hello right now, for example, at limit break 2, you're losing out on 15 speed and about 20 skill points, but it's still 360 from her. MLB Rico giving 300 herself. You even have the SR card here giving 340. You have Throne giving 400. And so if you think about it from the low limit break side of things on some of them, you have Still getting 280 here compared to a lot of the other support cards, especially some of the ones you might like better, being a little bit on the lower side. Like one example being Kitasan Black, not being near as good as some of the others. And so topping up a PAL card that maybe you've offed banner could be an option. I personally wouldn't do it right this second, but let the data kind of come in to kind of give yourself, and as well as your own testing with your own decks, before you would make a decision on that, specifically for independent training, especially if you're only going to go with like Limit Break 0. Because some of these cards do have some value to them when it comes to it. Throne's one I've been liking with the Borrow, just for the simple fact she gives a crap ton of stats, as well as prudent positioning. She's basically instant prudent positioning every time. I don't know what she gives at Limit Break 0. I don't even have a single copy. I mean, I haven't off-bannered her. But we do know it with her as the Borrow independent training as MLB is very, very strong. So that is pretty much most of the main cards. I think the biggest thing is really just topping up and making sure you have a core deck with this going into Grand Live to try and get yourself the flexibility in Grand Live. Because right now, Grand Live, there's not too many big things that you're going to need to pull for. It should be hopefully another big saving scenario until Major Romanu, and then you can get into the Goddess card potentially. Which to me, Goddess card value went up with independent training being, I believe it has easy access to Umastan, and just seeing how PAL cards are working here, if you're a more heavier spender, she may have some value there if you do just even 200 pulls for just the independent training itself. We'll have to see at that point. But of course, you have Summer Maruzensky, Fine Motion rerun. You have the Super Creek and Mr. CB rerun. Maybe you hold on to your selector until those are done to make a decision. There's a ton of other options. It's hard to kind of cover them all. I feel like wit is the most important of your support cards. That and speed. So while I mentioned a couple of them, you have like Mr. CB, Limit Break 1 being a very good one. Maybe you off-bannered her to 0. You can take her up to 1, get that wit bonus unlocked. You have most of the value there at Mr. CB. Now, you have some ones that I wouldn't like. Serious Assembly, I believe she's the one with From the Brink. Pretty bad overall, just because, one, her initial, unless you have her at high dupes, to get her to Limit Break 3 just to get a starting friendship of 15, to me, pretty bad in that respect. And From the Brink being a gamble skill. Trying to think of some of these other ones here. I mean, we've already talked about Curran Chan. Yeah, so I think that covers. I mean, you have Error Shakir as always in a. She has high friendship and skill point bonus, but no other real value in her. So it really just comes down to your deck overall and some of those options. Nakayama Festa being a very good one. A lot of people may have a lot of copies of, and she has skill point bonus. She just doesn't have special. She doesn't have special priority. I really like her for parent runs, especially now the auto training very strong. So you may want to pick her up for that, but no special priority, so not as good for an ace. It ultimately just comes down to what you currently have. The main ones I talked about, though, are the core. So Kitasan Black, Super Creek, and Fine Motion, of course. KFC, as a lot of people call them, the main 3. If you can unlock the special priority for Kitasan Black, the initial friendship for Super Creek, or overall just making Fine Motion better, those are probably your best bets. Summer Maruzensky, to me, being right around there to get her to Limit Break 1. I think that's the one that a lot of people will be utilizing it on. They did 200 pulls, got 0 copies of her, and then they used this to get like all the value out of Summer Maruzensky with Limit Break 1. And then all the others are just kind of to give yourself a little bit more flexibility, like Taiki Shuttle Speed you can utilize to get Mile Maven and Miles, even if she's going to be a little bit weaker at lower limit breaks. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's some of my thoughts and some of the cards you might be looking at. There's a ton of other ones out there and a ton of other options you might want to look into, depending on the direction you're going. But that's going to be just it for now. I thought I'd just make a kind of generic look at all the cards and the ones that I thought would be the best and most important ones. But if you like my content, if you like, comment, subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.